my fellow aviators and my beloved mechanics. Welcome back to another video, and this is a veterans video for Veterans Day. And I myself am a veteran from the United States Marine Corps and also in the U.S. Coast Guard. And it is my pleasure to do this Veterans Day celebration video and to provide information about what's going on at our airports. Around the country, we have many war memorials. The best ones I think that are out there are our airports. For hundreds, if not thousands, of our airports are named after the great veterans that have sacrificed and laid down their lives for our country. And in honor to them, I would like to take you on a journey of one such airport that I was very fortunate to be at, and that is the airport at Torrance Airport. Now, part of our culture in aviation for you young pilots is that of veterans. In fact, when I was growing up, the airport was a magical place. It was filled with veterans from World War II. I can hardly wait to get out to the airport just to be around these great men. I would go out there and these aircraft mechanics from World War II would be rewinding generators and alternators. They would be doing sheet metal repair on the airframes, bending and molding that aluminum and riveting it just like a master baker would be decorating a cake. It was amazing to be there. And I myself was trained by a mechanic that was actually in the U.S. Coast Guard in World War II. His name was Garrett Gregory. He was the sweetest and kindest man I have ever met. In fact, when I first met him, I was fresh out of the Marine Corps, both enlisted boot camp and officers candidate school, and I was a special agent. I was tough and mean, and I was going to hold my ground. This man gave me a hug and called me a sweetheart. He totally blew all that out of the water. And what an amazing gentleman. Over the years, he taught me to be a mechanic, and he was the one that recommended me for my inspection authorization. During World War II, he would often talk about taking the soldiers onto the hostile beaches in the Pacific on Higgins boats and dropping them off on the shores, most of which were not even to come back home to their loved ones. When he would talk about this, he would become very, very sad and quiet. And I recall that we would just have a moment of silence for our fallen veterans who perished overseas in the name of freedom and to provide the country that we live in today and with our many freedoms. There was also such great men as Pappy, who did the check rides at Montgomery Airfield. I remember Pappy because in my private pilot check ride, I was sitting there and he brought up density, altitude, and of course I just spit out density, altitude, altitude corrected for temperature, blah, blah, blah. Well, it didn't mean that much to me. Then Pappy kind of slowed down and he taught. And he started explaining he was a volunteer in the Flying Tigers that went over and fought the Japanese in China in those worthless P-40s. He explained to me that they didn't really have runways there. They just made landings and takeoffs on tops of mountains. And there was a cliff on the approach end, and there was a cliff on the departure end. He explained to me on hot days that the pilots would be taking off and landing, and some of them would go off the end of the runway, not knowing why. And it was due to the density altitude. We lost many fine pilots due to just not understanding density altitude. Pappy impressed on me as a future flight instructor the importance of teaching the simplest and the dumbest stuff. And each of these simple tasks, things that you might seem dumb as a flight instructor, were paid for by the lives of mostly our veteran pilots, off in another country, learning these lessons and then sharing them back with us. In fact, I cannot think of hardly any lessons in aviation that we give that was not paid for in the blood of a pilot. Now, moving forward, I got the chance to go and have a fixed base operation FBO at Torrance Airport. I had a maintenance shop and a flight school. And Torrance Airport kind of showed this culture of aviation, that of having veterans, of caring for people, of being welcoming. Anytime at Torrance Airport, you could go to the lobby when I was there, and there were families during lunchtime just having lunch there at the airport, watching the planes take off and land. You would also have groups of tourists come in because Torrance Airport is right next to LAX. And many tourists would come in because in America, this is one of the few countries where there's an abundance of general aviation, of airports you can go to, of pilots you can talk to. It is not this way in other countries. And these other tourists from other countries would come in and they would have such a great time at Torrance Airport. I remember many a time I would take the kids there on lunch and the tourists into my aircraft to take selfies. I remember opening up my maintenance hangar and showing these tourists and these foreigners how we maintain our aircraft. It was a magical place, just like all the other airports I had been at in the past. Now, my work took me away from Torrance Airport, and years later I came back. When I came back to Torrance Airport, I was absolutely horrified. For at the airport, it was no longer a friendly and welcoming place with pilots and mechanics talking to tourists, to families, and being welcoming. Instead, all the furniture had been taken out of the lobby and replaced with furniture that we would not even allow in a prison. Hard plastic chairs that you can't even sit in for 5 minutes, on purpose, just to make sure people don't enjoy the airport. Then I saw that the doors were locked. Why? And with a great big prison door. The pilot lounge, I went over to that, and it's locked. No access to it. All this at an airport named after one of our greatest veterans, Louis Zamperini. In fact, it's called Zamperini Field. Now, if you don't know much about Louis Zamperini or watched the movie Unbroken, Louis Zamperini was a young man from Torrance. He joined up in World War II. Over in a hostile ocean on the other side of the world, his plane suffered a malfunction and they crashed into a hostile ocean. Zamperini witnessed 8 of his crew members perish in that crash. He then spent 47 days just floating adrift in a life raft, only to be captured by the Japanese. He then spent over 2 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And upon getting home, he suffered with dealing with the horrors of war. He was a great American hero for the service that he offered to our country. In fact, at Torrance Airport, we have a war memorial there. That is in back of the lobby. Here's a picture of it, and it shows the horrors of war that are so easily forgotten. This airport was also the home of Robert A. Bob Hoover. This was also a great war hero of World War II. His story inspired many of our modern day action movies. Bob Hoover got shot down in a British Spitfire. He was captured by the Germans. He was then taken to a prisoner of war camp, and he escaped, and then he just borrowed a German fighter, flew it to Holland, and then escaped the POW camp and spent the rest of his wartime service in Holland there. So once again, another great American. He was frequently at the airport, and I really enjoyed seeing him. He was once again like all the other veterans that I had met over my life. He was a gentle and kind man, strong, and you could feel the strength within him. His gentleness showed through his eyes, and his heart was just always open. I remember my students would frequently bug him for an autograph. I remember I was young at the time, but I remember going up to him and offering him my Cessna 172s if he would like to go up for a flight or if he never needed an airplane. I don't think he would even bother with a 172, but at the time that's all I had, so that's what I offered him. I still remember him kind of smirking at that. So that was Bob Hoover. So with these gentlemen, these World War II veterans that the airport was named after, that would go to the airport, I think if they went to Torrance Airport and saw the prison door, saw the uncomfortable furnishings, making it uncomfortable for families and tourists to come visit, if he could see the locked pilot lounge denying access to transient pilots that need a place to rest and to do their flight planning. It's kind of ironic because right by the prison door, with all the signs restricting access, you can look up to the left here and see a recruiting poster for World War II. Come fly with us, or something like that. But advertising to get young pilots to go fight for freedom right next to a prison door, denying access to one of our airports. This is truly heartbreaking. And with Torrance Airport, this is going on around the country. Our airports, our war memorials to our veterans are being slowly taken away. They're being disrespected. In fact, one of the city council members, I can't even pronounce his name here, so I'm not even going to, well, let me try. Asam Shrikin. He stated and is quoted as saying, "We don't have to be expert on anything when we make decisions, especially when it comes to the airport." He said this about the airport. And he's one of the active members trying to shut down and harm our airport in any way possible. In fact, Torrance Airport just recently imposed a $14 landing fee on each of our pilots. Now, Torrance Airport is the home of a big flight school there, Sling Flight Academy. They're doing an excellent job of training young pilots. They have hundreds of pilots there. And if you remember getting just your private pilot license, how many touch and goes did you have to do? Now each and every one of those young pilots has to pay a $14 landing fee for every touch and go. This is adding probably hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to their flight training unnecessarily, just to punish our young pilots who don't have a voice, who don't have anyone sticking up for them, really. And this landing fee, I was there opposing it, and the city council decided to pass this in the dead of night. It was scheduled for one day, and then they said, "Oh, well, we're putting it off to the next meeting." Then they hid the notice that they were going to do this landing fee in like a run-on sentence. It was like about 3 sentences long, and it was just in the middle, just real brief there. And then they kept the meeting going on with just trivial city stuff, boring stuff, until the dead of night. Literally, it was after midnight that they passed this landing fee because they didn't want any pilots there opposing it, and they didn't want any opposition. So yes, this was done against our young pilots in the dead of night. On this, if you read the article, you can see that I submitted an article, an open letter to the mayor of Torrance, Greg Chen, asking him to return our airport to us, to put in comfortable furnishings for our visitors, for the members of the community, for a tourist coming in. I asked him to take down the locked prison door restricting access to our airport. I asked him to open up the pilot lounge for us transient pilots and pilots there that want to rest and just talk to other pilots. Not a word. Not a word from him. So it's been well over a year, and right now I'm bringing this up again in honor of Veterans Day. I ask that if you are a veteran, please take interest in our airports. They are, in fact, the most important memorials that we have in our nation, honoring our war heroes and honoring those that did not come back. Please share this with other veterans. Please get involved if you can in protecting our airports, because this is going on nationwide. There's nothing special about Torrance Airport. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you go to Torrance Airport and see Louis Zamperini's War Memorial. It's in the back of the lobby, and it kind of shows the horrors of war, and it honors a man that sacrificed his life in the service of our country and was imprisoned as a prisoner of war for 2 years. If you'd like to help with this channel, please send me an email and I can send out this flight patch. And this flight patch is Prisoner of War, Cry Freedom. And I would more than love to send this out to you. Also, if you would like to schedule your flight review with me, I'd be more than willing to come out to your airport if you can put together 2 or 3 people and talk to any group, no matter how small, over the various issues that we're having in aviation, and more importantly, how we're going to fix them. Then, if you're a young student pilot learning and you're on your multi-engine training, if you'd like to get advanced multi-engine training, going into Class Bravo airports and getting more training to become a corporate pilot, please consider me to do some of your training. I have a Piper Seneca 2, which is a 6-seater twin-engine Piper with turbochargers. So with that being said, I would like to wish you all a happy Veterans Day. And let's do our best to take a moment of silence and remember our forgotten heroes, our veterans. With that being said, I would like to just say peace, God bless,